Indeed, it's time to take a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. In-house analyst Obani Akinwale joins me in the studio, and via Skype is Olori Janet Mbafolabi, the publisher, Scroll Magazine. Lady and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining TVC Breakfast this hour. All right, let's take a look at the big stories in the papers this morning, beginning with Business Day. The big story there is on the rising food cost, border closure, push up inflation, intensify anger. And Blueprint is leading with the hashtag EndSARS protests, which it says worsens the unrest spreads to London, Coventry. Further protests will hurt economy. This is from the National Assembly begging the youth to end the protest. Daily Times is next, still with the protests. Don't send armed forces against protesters. Nigerians warn FG. Okay, that's Daily Times. And let's check out The Nation. Protesters halt activities in Lagos, Abuja, Ibadan. Several riders. One is Buhari meets Lawan Gbajabiamila. Governors, Senate President say let's end protest. Blockade in Agodi, Ibadan. Protesters attacked in Ilorin, Benin under total lockdown, and hashtag EndSARS leader Shega Lakes withdraws. We'll get back to discussing them, but let's also see what Nigerian News Direct is saying on EndSARS. The lead story is protesters block CBN's head office. As Army says, exercise Crocodile Smile 6, not to tackle protesters. Protesters launch online radio, and Governor Akeredolu calls for coordination of protests. Finally, paper under review at this time is The Leadership, laden with the hashtag EndSARS protest. FG is saying the protests have been hijacked to destabilize PMB's government. And that's the crux of our discussions at this time. Let's begin with Olori Janet Mbafolabi there. So when you weigh the position of government, first, an arm of government is pleading with the protesters to stop the protests. Another arm of government is saying that the protests have been hijacked with an intention to destabilize government. What do you make of that?
I think that in situations like this, according to security experts, there is always that tendency for some people to infiltrate the protesters. So if the government feels that some people have hijacked, they may not have totally hijacked, but they may have infiltrated the protesters who have genuine reason to be on the street, and they have been, largely they have been peaceful. So and the other side of the government, that's the National Assembly, is appealing to the protesters to leave the street and wait for government to meet their demands. In every protest and crisis like this, there are always sponsors, whether direct or indirect. There are always victims. We have seen some people have died, and there are some beneficiaries of crisis or protests like this. But in all, the protesters, which are largely the youth, may not want to believe the government, because Nigeria has been facing a long history of broken promises. Since the independence in 1960, so many promises have been made, so many promises have been broken. So perhaps that's why they are saying this time they must remain on the street until the promises, that the demands that they are making are met. However, I want to say they could leave the streets and wait for the 2 weeks that Gbajabiamila said, and see if the demands will be met or not. If the demands are not met, they could come back to the street. They have already made their point, and they have made a very strong point. They have also demonstrated that they could organize themselves into a strong force to demand accountability and good governance.
Well, that said, Obani, what do you make of the lingering contentions? Should the government believe this time around? The protests appear to be intensifying still.
I think there are two sides of divides. The first side of divide is that it is nothing new to all of us that the trust between the governed and the government is totally zero, and the confidence has been eroded away over time. So if the NSAS protesters seems not to believe in the state government, they have every reason. And if you look at it, they have tabled their request to the government, and government said it's ongoing. I don't think it would be too much at this point in time, looking at that the country is bleeding, and looking at the number of you that are jobless and people that are even rendered jobless as a result of this protest, that the National Assembly make a pronouncement that going forward, looking at what is happening, every member of the National Assembly is taking 50% cut. I think those are one of the welcome that these guys will look into. But nonetheless, I want to appeal to NSAS that we don't start another process called NSAS, because you look at those guys that work at Lekki Toll Gate. Yes, we are resetting the country. The Lekki Concession Company can decide to lay them off. You and I know what happened between February and on September this year, where a lot of companies had to downsize, cut the number of staffs, and it is happening again. For the past 2 weeks, a lot of people are able to get to their place of work. Those that live on daily income cannot go. But the people that we are fighting, the government, like I said to somebody this morning, I said, President Muhammadu Buhari does not have any business outside the villa. So if we like, let us be jumping up and down. The man does not have anything to do outside. So I think the best place we will pick at is places like National Assembly, places like the villa, so that the president will come and address the masses. But stopping the man that is in Lekki, the man that is in K2, the man that is at Idioroko will not, because it will affect their business and it will not affect the government. But again, I don't think it is too much for the president, because on World Teachers Day, the president came out to say they are giving teachers this number of years of services, Absolutely. They are increasing their remuneration. It's not too much for government after 2 weeks to come up with saying whereby the police remuneration is being adjusted. And I've said this severally, that we are poor. Nobody should give us that we are rich in this country. The total budget of this country is 13.8 billion proposed. And if you divide 13.8 trillion over 200 million citizens, you get an average of about 70,000 naira per annum. So it means that you and I only have 6,000 naira, as if they don't do any developmental project that is accrued to us as individuals. Now, if you look at on the same basis and look at 129 billion for 469 staff, it's almost about 200 million per person. So until we get to that point whereby political offices are not juicy, money are not too much, the NSAS guy will be on the street. And I want to appeal to NSAS people, please and please, do not allow anybody to infiltrate you. I was watching a story yesterday, the trial of Chicago 7. I was asking a friend, are we ready for this? And again, if you read the story of the journey of an African colony by Olashukwu Ashore, you look at it that the 40 lines are still there. And there will always be alliance either between North and the East, or the South and the West. And if you look at it now, the South and the East are almost grounded, but the North is not grounded. So we have to also be smart in order not to cripple our economy and increase the number of unemployment in our areas, and ensure that we place our agitation down. We should not be doing jamboree. This is a period of sober reflection for all of us, because people are dying even as if that is going on. The policeman is using their money to buy uniforms. The policeman does not have a place to rest. Their children does not have a secure future. As much as those people that are also in that protest that have lost their family, their loved one, there is no compensation yet. So enough of talking. Let government act, and let also ensure that the protesters, like what happened in Osogbo last week, is uncalled for.
Absolutely.
You can't attack a sitting governor, and if the man has deployed his arsenal of defense, you know what will have happened.
And not only can you not, of course, looking at the magnitude of what happened there, while the governor went to address protesters, and then we saw, that ugly scenario. Of course, we've also had similar ugly scenarios, Madam Janet, to when we see how people have been felt down, while doing their constitutional right now to make their voices heard. But still on the case of the protesters as against the body language of the government, the protesters are saying, okay, yes, indeed, there is a process to these things, but then we are also asking, for better welfare for the police officer. Then they are also asking that why haven't we seen resignations? Surely that cannot take a process to achieve. Some things can be done instantly, and that is what they are still, demanding that the government does. Jonathan Folabi, you're on now.
Okay. Yes. The 36 state governors, they get over 250 billion annually as security vote. What are they doing with that money? The money is enough to re-energize the police in their state. The money is enough to retrain the police in their state to get effective performance. and they should be held accountable for that money, which in most cases they don't even give accounts of. The money is not expected of them to give accounts over. It's money that they don't come out to say this is how we spent it. So that, for me, I think they should start channeling that money properly into securing their various states by taking care of their police. We've seen what the Lagos state has done with the police in the Lagos state. So if every state could do that, buy them vehicles, kit them well. Most of those ones in Lagos, you see them in good uniform, but other policemen who are not taken care of because they buy their boots, they buy their uniform. Some of them may not have the kind of money to buy, so they go around in tattered uniform. But that's not an excuse for them to extort or to harass or to oppress innocent people. They are to fight crime. So the starsmen who have caused this problem now should have gone to fight banditry in Zamfara, in Katsina, and other places where banditry is a menace, not to oppress innocent boys on the streets of Lagos and other states in the south.
All right, and finally, Obani Akiwale, so look at the angle from Links now, dissociating himself. Of course, he's been given this line since last week, and now the paper here is, saying categorically. I saw his comments, though, on a slant to the protest, but now we hear his, and this is somebody who has long been associated with the mantra NSAS.
So what I would say about Links is one, now they have a group they call the anonymous group that are now hacking website. That's a crime. And somebody will be prosecuted for that. So you have a lot of things going on that are criminal. But again, a lot of people say carry this as to Yobe, to Borno to fight. I think we always forget quickly that the entire number of police force in Nigeria is not up to 500,000. And we have a population of over 200 million. So when we keep saying, SARS should leave Lagos, should go to Borno, what is the total number of Lagos State? Do we even have up to 100,000 police officers policing 20 million population in Lagos State? I think we should not always forget that. So when we are saying they should reform SARS, we should also have adequate number of policing officers for each state. Then again, the governors are chief security officer of their state, but they cannot control commissioner. The governor of Anambra said that to go to Akuzu police to go and free detainees. Governor Sanwo-Olu has to go to police to go and free detainees himself. So when you say the governor should do that, until the constitution is done in such a way that the governor has control over who becomes the police officer in their state, then you can ask them to put security vote. Then on the security vote, we always think security vote is only for police. No. There's something they call, for example, Lagos Operation Mesa, where you have the military, the navy, all of them come together, and they are all funded. Apart from the IRS security outfit that individual states have, Osun has their own. So what we're saying, Osun has QRS or thereabout, Quick Response Squad. So what we're saying is that Link is right to leave because he started this in 2017. And now there is cybercrime involved. So if anybody is going to be prosecuted, he's number one person on that list. Okay. So again, we will continue to appeal to our brothers that what you are doing is right. This generation of Sorosoke should continue to speak up, and government should listen and act. But nonetheless, we should not give them opportunity for intruders to create violence in such a way that government will say anarchy has been set up, and those boys in the bar that don't have any business doing will now come back and start harassing people. Please, this country is for all of us, and we all need to do what is right and level the protester and the government. Government act. National Assembly cut your expenses. Presidency come out, increase police numbers, increase their salaries, increase their standard of living, and increase job opportunity for people.
We must end this now. Indeed, time now to look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers at this time. I have some here with me, and I'm beginning with the national economy. But joining me to review these big stories are in-house analyst Obani Akiwale and Olori Janet Mbafolabi, the publisher of Scroll magazine. Thank you very much for being with us again, Janet, and of course Obani here. So let's begin with national economy, which reads, leading with #EndSARS, disrupting our economy, not best way to go, says NAS. And the Tribune, no peace without justice, Catholic bishops tell government. Now to the Daily Trust, still on NSAS, too much hunger in the land. Governors are saying this. Protests can hurt economy, should stop now, says Senate President Lawan. Those in government or those in streets against government, not anti-SARS anymore. That's a quotation there. And another writer reading Operation Crocodile Smile, ill-timed, says 30 CSOs. We are not targeting NSAS protesters, the army responds. Let's check out the Punch. NSAS crocodile smile is the lead story. The military operation will backfire. Protesters, others warn Buhari. Soldiers will join protests. We won't stop. Campaigners dare FG. We won't allow dissent is the last rider. We won't allow dissent into anarchy. FG tells protesters. Finally, at this time, The Guardian leading with no military force, Nigerians warn. National Assembly wants end to protests, FG to address demand in 14 days. Ethnic groups back agitations. OPC ex-senator wants restructuring. So let's commence discussions now. Mr. Akinwale, if you look at the demands, of course, it has since panned into several other reforms being demanded across several sectors. But on police reforms, can we at least say, or are you convinced that the reforms have begun?
I am not. Simply because, one of the phrases I saw online from, attributed to Pastor E. Adeboye that said, putting the old wine in a new jar is not going to have the same taste. So what we have seen fundamentally is that there is a collapse of system in Nigerian policing. And you cannot, it's just like you say you are changing from SARS to SWAT. Who is swatting, who is sassing? And the question we ask ourselves, I said it a couple of weeks before the name SWAT was given to us, that it's a personality issue. It's a systemic problem. You have a country of over 200 million and you have about less than 500,000 police officers. You have a country whereby people see policing as when you don't have any job you want to do, just go and apply and get into police force. You have a police force that shows that once you carry gun, if you are wearing black and you are carrying stick, you are not a police officer. But once you carry gun, you are originally a police officer. And this is not about SARS. The entire policing is the problem. So you can't just say it's only SARS that has this problem. If you look at special police forces funded by the each state government, for example, in Osun State, they call it Quick Response Squad. In Lagos State, they call it Rapid Response Squad. You will see how Officer Tunde Disu will dress, Disu will dress so neatly. You will see how their uniform are so starched. You see how their gun looks so clean. But go to the next police station, close to our RSS office. You see the same police officer in the same force, dressing like, we don't want to explain it. Then you now look at the police officer called IRT. You see them dressing like commando. So you ask yourself,
where is the uniformity?
Where's the uniform? So and this is there. You have a police officer earning as low as 50,000 naira per month, and a bag of rice is 35,000. So it is not about you changing name, doing the change of nomenclature. It's a systemic problem. It is not too much. See, we said the highest fund for our budget every year is for security. Yet we have police officers buying beret, buying button, using brown trouser on black shirts. And you have a National Assembly member collecting 750 as a basic salary. When you add all those allowances together, somebody is taking 200 million no per annum, and you have somebody earning 1.5 million per annum. And you want this 1.5 million to secure this 200 million without thinking of robbing them. So it is not about you coming today and saying you are going to do security. For who? These are innate behavior. So what we're saying is that it's not about even asking IGP to resign. When this police officer goes for external events, they do well in Interpol. Even at the moment, Nigeria is being primed to take over the next Interpol. Shows you the attitude. So it is a systemic issue. What are we feeding them with? What kind of training are we giving them here? What kind of environment are they thriving over here? Look at the Air Force building in Ikeja. Look at the police building in Ikeja. So
what are we taking out? Absolutely.
By the government.
What are we taking out and what are we infusing back into the police operatives? Okay, so that said, let's move along. Yet another angle is, where is the justice? 12 years and counting. Where is the justice for protesters who have even been attacked? Mrs. Simba Afolabi, so there is Mr. Onome who was gunned down, who finally succumbed to the injuries sustained in the Abuja protest. There is Jimo Isiak, who was also gunned down in Ogbomosho. There is also the man in Edo State, Benin, who was also attacked last Friday while exercising his right to protest. Still nothing, no justice, says the protesters. So where do we go from here? Are we not still talking about the same thing?
In crises like this, in protests like this, there are chances that there will be incidents like that. However, if those policemen are identified, those who gunned down those protesters are identified, they should be tried for murder or for whatever offense that is in the constitution against them. Crises like this should be avoidable because these children or these protesters are largely very peaceful. There is actually no reason for shooting, there is no reason for violence. However, there are opportunistic criminals who take advantage of crises like this to operate. They cannot operate in an environment of peace. They are always looking for where there is crowd, where there is strife, where there are protesters, and hide under their cover to perpetrate their activities, like what we saw in Osogbo, like what we saw in Ikorodu. However, I also want to add that it is really unfortunate that SARS is now a metaphor. SARS was a unit created in the literary sense of the word when armed robbers were terrorizing Lagos, notorious armed robbers like Tony Montana, like Shina Rambo. That was when SARS was created in the literary sense of it, Special Anti-Robbery Squad. I don't know how the first officer who handles SARS will be feeling. I'm talking about the man who was the OC SARS, Midenda, Simeon Midenda, and his 2IC, who was the second in command, Taiwo Lakano, who is now a retired DIG. I'm wondering how they'll be looking at the SARS that they left, the SARS that they not, because it was actually their babies. They were the first officers who took charge of SARS. And the situation within the police was not any better than now. Police was still underfunded even at that time in the early 90s. I'm talking about 1992. That was the time of the military when the police was even worse funded than now. Every year, budgets are given out for the maintenance of barracks. So what happens to that money? Where does the budget for repair of barracks or rehabilitation of barracks, where does it go? That is why police officers are transferred and there is no accommodation for them.
I'm afraid we have to leave it at this point now. Olori Janet Mbafolabi, we thank you so much, but we are unfortunately constrained by time on the show. Obani Akinwale, thank you also for your contributions on TVC Breakfast.